So the first item that we're going to talk about are agenda adjustments. Do we have any?
Yes, the administration has one. We have the MTSS summer update and the summer timeline are pretty much identical, so we're just going to consolidate that into the MTSS summer update that Lauren and I will give.
Okay. And then correspondence, resignations, retirements, and nominations.
We will have that. I have 3 nominations. The first one is for Faye Brown. Faye will be joining us next year as a 3rd grade teacher at RMMS. She has her bachelor's in math and elementary ed from Plymouth State University and her master's in education curriculum instruction from Plymouth State University. She'll be joining us contractually at a master's step 3 for a salary of $51,911. I need a motion to accept that nomination.
I'll make a motion to accept the nomination of Faye Brown at $53,000. I didn't write it down quickly enough.
51,911.
51,911.
I'll second.
All in favor? Yes.
Yes.
Is that correct? The second nomination is for Steve Lebel, L-E-B-E-L, to be the math specialist at RMMS. Steve has his bachelor's in special education and elementary education from Rivier University. He has his master's curriculum instruction from Lesley University, and he has his doctorate in curriculum teaching and learning from Northeastern University. He'll be joining us master's plus 45 at step 14 for a salary of $79,670.
I can make a motion to accept the nomination of Steve LaBelle for the math curriculum specialist position at a salary of $79,670.
I'll second.
All in favor?
The last one is for Henry Kopetsky, Kopezynski, be the music teacher at RMMS. He has his bachelor's in music from Berkeley College. He'll be joining us at a bachelor's step 2 for a salary of $43,293.
Great. So I'll make a motion to accept the nomination of Henry Kopensky for the music teacher position at RMMS and CSDA at a salary of $43,293.
I'll second.
All in favor?
That's it for correspondence, resignations, retirements, and nominations.
Andy, I think I forgot to officially make a motion to approve the agenda adjustment. Should we do that?
For the PTO presentation?
No, for the combining of the 705 and the 725. Does that matter?
No, you're
No.
okay.
Okay, all right. I don't normally do this for everybody, so
Yep.
bear with me, please. Okay, so the next step is the approval of last meeting's minutes. Are there any alterations to the minutes? Do you want me to read those? Is that-
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. So we have some slight adjustments to the minutes from May 24th, 2023. On page 14, line 18, we need to replace things with thinks. Page 18, line 12, we need to replace themselves with themselves. On page 1, line 10, we need to delete was following were. I'm not totally clear on why we need to replace themselves with themselves. But it's fine with me because it's not changing anything. So I'll motion that we accept these changes as amended.
I'll second.
Sounds good. Okay.
We'll figure it right along.
Themselves,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so the next step is a presentation of the Bronze Award. I'll leave that to Mrs. Boulay.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Colleen, we need to vote on the minutes.
Oh, we need to vote on the minutes? Okay. We did, I think we did.
We did.
Yeah, we all
Kind
approved.
of.
Okay.
Very
All right.
quietly.
We were very quietly, she was like, are we good? We all raised our hands.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I think because I used amended and
Well-
changed in the same sentence.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. pleased that I was able to invite two individual students from CSDA, Josie Murphy and Janelle Huggins. These are two individuals at CSDA who young students provided a wonderful end-of-the-year assembly for CSDA, and they did such a remarkable job. I wanted to be able to show the entire community here through the school board what their presentation is all about and what outstanding project that they created. All right, I'm done.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Janelle Huggins. I am going into 6th grade and I have officially bridged to a cadet. Hi there, my name is Josie and I am also going into 6th grade and have also officially bridged to a cadet, which means both Janelle and I have reached our 7th year of Girl Scouts. Which also means that we have been in Girl Scouts together since kindergarten. A question you might have for us is, what is a Bronze Award? A Bronze Award is when Girl Scout juniors team up to make a difference in their community. They learn important leadership skills, discover new passions, and learn how seemingly small actions can make a big difference in a community. It all adds up to the Girl Scout Bronze Award, the highest honor a Girl Scout junior can achieve. Another question you might have for us is, why do we choose to build a buddy bench? According to the U.S. Department of Justice, every 7 minutes, a child is bullied. We didn't want our schools' playgrounds to still be part of the statistic. We wanted to promote inclusion and give students a safe space to eliminate loneliness, and promote inclusion and give students a safer space to eliminate loneliness and foster friendships. Okay, and another question we get asked a lot is, how does a buddy bench work? If you are sitting on the buddy bench like Janelle, you are looking for a friend. And when someone asks you to play with them, join them. And always remember to glance over at the school's buddy bench. And if you are not sitting on the bench like me, ask a classmate on the buddy bench to play with you. And keep on expanding your circle of friends until everyone has someone to hang out with. How we built it and where we got the materials. We researched various types of benches and found the perfect one. Then we went supply shopping. Mark Barshard from H&B Construction generously donated all of the supplies. After measuring out all of the pieces, he helped us prep the wood into the correct sizes. It was now build time. Mr. Barshard coached us through using power tools to assemble the bench. And look at me, I still have all 10 of my fingers. Don't ask her about her toes. We followed step-by-step plans to build the bench. Our sponsor, Mark Barshard, works for a company called H&B Construction based out of Brookline, New Hampshire. We knew Mark Barshard could help us because he's an expert. Mark Barshard has been working in many years of construction. We are so glad he offered to help. Photos! So in the first photo, you can see me and Josie planning out, and just to point out how long it took, there's snow in the background. And then the 3 other pictures are us assembling the bench in my garage. And the last 4 pictures are us decorating, painting, adding the vinyl. And the third person there is our friend Courtney who generously decided to help. And then we have more photos. So that photo up in the corner you see is our first ever Girl Scout meeting. Me and Josie are sitting in the corner. And the next photo is our second tree lighting as a troop. And then most recently, our cookie sale near the bottom. And then the one with us in jackets is at the Disney on Ice Girl Scout event. And in case you didn't know this about Janelle and I, we both quite enjoy skiing. So there's us skiing at Pat's Peak. And finally, we have us at our bridging ceremony from brownies to juniors. And finally, we would like to say a few special thanks Take it away, Janelle. So we would like to thank Courtney Head for helping us paint the bench, even though she is not here. And we would also like to thank Mark Barshard for helping us, coaching us through building the bench and donating all of the supplies. And we would also like to thank Mrs. Boulay for taking time out of her busy schedule to make this happen. I would also like to thank all of our parents for guiding us through this amazing adventure. And finally, we would like to thank all of you for listening to our presentation.
Nice work. That is a beautiful bench. Thank you so much. It looks like a lot of work and it came out amazing. So thank you. And you did a great job presenting also. So thank you. The next thing that we wanted to add was the PTO, I believe, wanted to present. Do you want me to go up there? You can sit wherever you're comfortable or stand.
All right. Well, good evening. My name is Katrina Loff, and I am the outgoing president of the Brookline PTO. And I'm joined tonight by our co-president, Miranda Terry, and several of our current and former amazing team members. Over the past several years, our team has worked diligently to provide fun and enriching experiences to all students in our district from preschool to 6th grade, including field trips, assemblies, guest speakers, school and community events. In addition, we love to show our appreciation and gratitude to teachers and staff for the incredible work they do each and every day within our schools. A few years ago, when COVID impacted the daily academic routine, let alone the world, it also impacted the Brookline PTO in regards to the support we were able to provide to our schools. While the team put their creative hats on to offer things like at-home cookie kits and virtual field trips, we found ourselves in a place where we weren't spending nearly as much of our budget simply because we couldn't. So instead, we saved for the unknown. 2022-23 was the first academic year post-COVID that we were business as usual and have loved all of the adventures our students participated in this year. All of this brings me to the reason we are here today. This past August, I randomly followed up on a lead to become a charitable gaming partner with the River Casino in Nashua. Within 3 days, I was background checked, fingerprinted, and submitted paperwork to the New Hampshire Lottery Commission. The Brookline PTO was approved for 10 charitable gaming days in the fall of 2022, and as luck would have it, no pun intended, we were selected again at the beginning of this year. Between both gaming periods, we deposited a grand total of $45,115. To say this partnership was an unexpected windfall for the PTO and our schools is 1,000% an understatement. As this academic year has come to a close, our team has completed a final budget review, and we are pleased to announce that through the savings during the COVID years, ongoing fundraising efforts, donations, and partnerships from our incredible parents and the community, and this newly found charitable gaming partnership, we are really excited to present the Brookline School District tonight with a check in the amount of $50,000 to be used for the CSDA playground. We are beyond thrilled to help get this project off the ground and can't wait to see the impact it will have on our kids for many, many years to come. And while we're here, and we have all of you here, we also want to thank each of you for all of your time and dedication to our district. We know your jobs are not easy. They're often thankless, and we want you to know that you are appreciated and valued for all your work. And we have this lovely check. Just so everyone knows, the real check has already been given to the district.
This is exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you on behalf of all the families and students and staff. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much to the PTO. That is just amazing. And I wanted to just take a moment to thank everybody that's here because I know you do a lot, the majority of the work on the PTO. And the PTO does need volunteers, really. Not desperately because you look what you did, but they're always looking for more people to fill the role. So I just wanted to thank, and I hope I'm not missing anyone, Katrina, Miranda, Jess, Darcy, Joellen, and Samantha. Samantha, right? We've never met. You've done so much work, and this is just an amazing gift. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great. And I know some people. So are we going next into public? We don't need to motion.
You need to motion to recess
Okay.
to go into the public hearing on the
Okay.
maintenance trust.
All right. So I'm going to make a motion to recess this meeting to go into the public hearing on the maintenance trust.
A second.
All three approve? All set?
Okay. During the budget season, Principal Molinari and Mrs. Boulay identified several needed repairs, improvements for their respective buildings during the budget process. At the hearing for the FY24 budget, the Brookline School Board recommended the funding source for these particular items be the Brookline Maintenance Expendable Trust. The voters approved the board's recommendation during the 2023 voting session. Therefore, this is the official request to use the expendable trust for the following expenses. First is to note the RMMS fire panel. The budget process identified CSDA and RMMS fire panels as needing to be replaced, but only the CSDA panel at $100,000 was approved. The RMMS panel has now reached an urgent need, so it has been included below. The two fire panels combined will be a total cost of $135,500, with the additional $35,000 that the voters approved coming from the maintenance trust. Additionally, each of the schools will be getting bollards for both schools. That cost will be $3,500. The bollards will be placed in front of the main entrances to provide added security in the event of an emergency. So items from RMMS under the maintenance trust were cafeteria tables at $9,500. The fire panel, which I've already talked about, for $69,000. The burglar, the panic alarm for $15,000. The wiring update of $23,100. Access points of $7,250, and the bollards at $1,000, for a total at RMMS of $124,850. At CSDA, we have the fire panel for $66,500. We have the exterior doors, Phase 2, for $10,000. The exterior lighting for $10,000, and the bollards for $2,500, for a total of $89,000, bringing the grand total of $213,850. The current balance of the maintenance trust is $93,656. The voters approved during the budget process the addition of $155,000, bringing the FY24 expenditures to $213,850, which will give us a balance to bring forth next year of $34,806. That is the information on the maintenance trust. And then we go to testimony in favor. Is there any testimony against? We'll repeat it one more time. Testimony in favor of the maintenance trust? Testimony against? Thank you. At this time, we can close the public hearing because the motion for the expenditure will actually take place under deliberations.
Can I just ask one question, even though it's a
Absolutely.
small amount of money? I don't want to ever approve something, and I'm just going to ask, but I don't know what a bollard is.
Oh, I googled bollards and it's
Okay.
those tall, like cement,
Like-
bright colored poles to like
Okay.
keep people from driving.
Okay.
into
Oh,
things
yeah,
they
those are
shouldn't.
important.
If you went to Target, the big red balls out front
Yes.
are actually
Got
bollards.
you. Okay.
Please.
I just wouldn't
If
wanna
you go to a number of
yeah.
other places, they have very large planters.
Yep.
So we haven't decided what ours will look like, but they will be hopefully appealing to the eye in front of the school building.
They're in the front, and do we have them in the back at RMMS? Because I heard once about somebody making a mistake and driving towards the,
There are bollards in front of anywhere where there's either an electrical connection or a gas connection right now.
Okay.
These would be strictly for main
for
entrance
that,
safety.
gotcha, okay,
Okay,
thank you.
welcome.
You know, like,
Yeah, I should have looked it up,
The
but I
same
didn't.
question.
Okay. So do we move on now to the public input?
You just
portion?
officially resume the board meeting.
Okay, so do I motion to?
You don't have to motion, you just need to
Okay.
close the public hearing at 6:21.
Okay, so we're gonna close the hearing at 6:21 and go back into our regular meeting. Okay, and then we are open for public input. Just wanna make sure there's. And just for public input, just as a reminder, the board provides a maximum of 30 minutes to hear public comments from residents at the beginning of each regular board meeting. This period may be extended by a majority vote of the board. Additionally, the board may include additional public comment period for specific agenda items with a time limit for public comments specified on the pertinent agenda. Individual speakers will be allotted 3 minutes per person. Speakers may not relinquish allotted time to another speaker. For specific meetings and/or specific agenda items, the board may, at the outset of the public comment period, increase the individual time limit for all speakers. The chair will recognize speakers on a first-come, first-served basis, a first-come basis, sorry. Speakers shall identify themselves and their home address clearly for the record, and except as otherwise provided in this policy, members of the public may offer comments on agenda items. So I'm going to declare the period for public input open at, I shut my phone off. 6:23 PM. Is there any public comment?
Okay. Oh, I almost fell. That would have been so good. Kathy Levitt, to Birch Hill Road, Brookline. I want to commend the board for the August plans explained on page 5 of this evening's agenda. I think this is a fantastic start for the safety and well-being of our Brookline school students. They deserve the support of the school board, district leadership, and school administrators. Our school kids deserve the support of their community. Despite any grumblings of indoctrinating children, please be assured there are far more community members who support these plans to provide a safe learning environment for our children. Support your teachers as they roll this out. We know there are Brookline residents for whom racism and prejudice are simply not a big deal. But there are more of us who want better for our kids, for our neighbors, and our Brookline community as a whole, and we are with you. The safety and well-being of our community's children outweigh any discomfort that might arise when or if parents complain about Brookline kids practicing inclusivity and kindness in our schools. We are with you. We are adults. We can handle the slings and arrows lobbed by folks who won't be better, but our kids shouldn't have to. Thank you for your action. We will continue to support you for as long as your work continues. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, I want to say thank you as well. As we've said, this isn't going to be a fast process, but it is a process that we are committed to. So thank you for recognizing that, and no, we are continuing to push forward.
Does anybody else have public input at this time? Okay. Again, we appreciate your support. We know we have it, and we look forward to continuing this work that is, can be a long process, but we can also do whatever needs to be done immediately, too, and I think we're trying to do that, too. So thank you. I appreciate the support, or we appreciate the support. Did you have public input? No? Okay. I just want to make sure I didn't leave anybody. All right, so I don't have to. So I will end the public input session unless, I'll ask one more time, no more public input, and we'll move on to the principal's report.
You have to declare it closed at 6:25.
Okay. Okay, I will declare the public input closed at 6:25 PM. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so on our administrator's report, we just provided it this month, as we typically do at the end of the year, the enrollment history. So for our 23-24, it was 568 students as of the end end of the year for CSDA, combined CSDA and RMMS. We had a busy year at the end of the year. There are some pictures here for grade 3. They had their final concert with Mrs. Sinclair. They also had a wonderful field day, and as has been tradition, from what I understand, at RMMS, they figure out how to get all those kids together, and someone provides a picture of them showing the 2023. So all the students are there. And then there was a big picture here at the end of the year with all the staff. And the signs were provided at both schools for the end of the year by the PTO. So it was a wonderful generosity of the PTO again. At CSDA, we have pictures. We instituted something that had started a few years ago before my time, before COVID basically, and it's called Passions Day. And Passions Day took place for grades 4 and 5 to have a special event for them, since grade 6 tends to have a lot of activities at the end of the year before they graduate. Passions Day basically was a day in which teachers and all staff members could teach their passion, and students were able to have 3 different sessions in the morning, and they got to kind of choose from a catalog of different options that the teachers may have been providing. It could have been an athletic event, it could have been an artistic endeavor, or it could have been learning how to play chess. So the students really had a great time, and so did the teachers. So that's something I definitely want to have instituted on a yearly basis now. Grade 6 had a great turnout for their science fair. It was wonderful that grades 4 and 5 were able to see the great creations and the long research projects that the grade 6 students worked on. And then we had the event in the evening for the community to come out. So that was a wonderful event. And as some individuals here may be present at our grade 6 promotion, which was going wonderfully, and then just like we're having the weather lately, the rains came really fast. But at the end, you can't necessarily tell in black and white, but if you look on the website, you'll see a wonderful rainbow that we had. So that kind of finalized the grade 6 promotion, which was great. And then there's a picture there of the CSDA staff at the end of the year. Upcoming events, July 18th, we'll be having the Brookline School Board Policy Meeting, so if anybody wants to attend that, that'll be on July 18th at CSDA at 9 a.m. in the morning. We also have our school board meeting scheduled for August 23rd. August 24th, grade 4 will be having a meet and greet at CSDA. More information will be provided as we go forward. I usually have 2 to 3 sessions, so that gives opportunities for families to attend different times during the day. Our staff will be returning before you know it, but we don't want to go that far into August yet. But then we have kindergarten open house and the first day of school. We still currently have some Brookline staffing needs. It's kind of in flux right now as we go day to day. Right now at RMMS, we need a total of 5 paraeducators and a speech pathologist. And at CSDA, we need 6 paraeducators and a speech pathologist, a half-time, part-time speech pathologist. But we'll keep working on that. On the next page, we show the professional staff, and you'll see that the bold underlined individuals are the new staff. So most of those, they've been, many of them were approved this evening. So we'll keep working if anything else comes up. And we talked about the, I just want to give some information regarding discipline based on our last meeting with the school board the past 2 months. And we'll be continuing as we work on the MTSSB committees, which I actually met with today with Lauren. We, Mr. Molinari and I pulled together some data. We went back. It wasn't necessarily easy to pull all this information, so we still need more time to go into a little deeper. But I was trying to see what, if there were any consistencies with the behaviors that we've been seeing this year, where they were occurring as far as the time frame of the year. So I'll just give you a little, some data here that we were able to pull together. For RMS, it's interesting that typically at the beginning, and again, when I say typical for this year, I guess, because I haven't had to pull this type of data before. At the beginning of the school year, their incidence of behaviors were rather high, particularly in September and October. Approximately 41% of their overall behaviors were occurring at that time frame. Versus at CSDA, our incidence of behavior problems for the September-October timeframe were only at approximately 17%. By the time we got to January, the number of incidents overall for RMMS were approximately at 58%, versus at CSDA, it was approximately 37%. When we went to the last half of the year, from February through June, it was just the opposite. It's almost polar opposites if you look at it, that incidence of what we considered poor behavior was up to about 63% at CSDA versus 42% at RMMS. So what does this data tell us right now? Right now, they're polar opposites. Is it because of the age? Possibly. You know, at RMMS, when students are starting school, a lot of the behaviors may be because they're excited to be at school, but they're not sure how to behave at school. Versus at CSDA, they know how to behave at school. Or they should know at their age because they are older. Although they're children, they're still learning. However, at the end of the year, it seems like, you know what, by March timeframe, it seems like at CSDA, maybe they're tired, maybe they're done, they wanna move on. But obviously, that's information that we have to go in and look at further. Some of the other things that we did look at though, because I know it's a concern by the community, by parents, by students, I know the conversations come up, you know, well, what's happening, what's being done, no one's, you know, receiving consequences, though, that we talk about them. But just to give you some numbers, for instance, at RMMS, they have had approximately 25 after-school detentions. Recess detentions, they had 42. Lunch detentions, they had 24. In-school suspensions, they had 1. Out-of-school suspension, they had 1. Bus suspensions, they had 31. At CSDA, looking at the same type of data, after-school detentions, we had 33. In-school suspensions, 14. Out-of-school suspensions, 18. Excuse me, those are days. Bus suspensions, 15. Then at CSDA, we had loss of computer privileges. Typically what that means is that we received a Go Guardian alert from the SAU stating that students are using the internet inappropriately. So we had 12 incidents, 7 of which resulted in students losing loss of privileges for either two weeks or more. So that's kind of the information that we're trying to glean from all of our data that we can put our hands on. And again, to try to look at, you know, is there some commonality to the behaviors at particular times of the year? But more importantly, moving forward, what can we do to help eliminate those time periods? Perhaps, you know, when I talked about this Passions event, for instance, maybe that's something that we need to do more often, and maybe we need to do that at CSDA during the March-April timeframe, where maybe kids need more encouragement to be more positive. Those are the types of things that we need to look at.
Can I just ask a question on the percentages? And I'm probably missing something, but I think it's important enough to ask. So at RMMS, you said there was sort of an all-time high that in the first couple of months of school, I assume you meant 41% of the 100% of incidents happened in those 2 months.
Yes.
And then by January, 58% of the incidents had occurred. So obviously, within those, there was a slowdown, which is what you want and would
Correct.
expect.
Yep.
But then I thought you said February to June, it was 63%.
That was
No, that was at
The
CSDA.
CSDA, and so-
CSDA, it was, I rounded to 63% from.
And then February to June was,
February to June was at 62.7% at CSDA. so
and then what was it at
63%.
RMMS?
At RMMS, it was
42?
41.6, yeah, 42%.
So, okay, so I see what you're saying. So 41% of the incidents happened in September and October. Between, up through January, a total of 58% happened, and then February to June, 42% happened.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Those are, it's a little confusing, the numbers, to me, maybe. I mean, I get what you're saying. I mean, what you want to see is a decrease in behaviors, for sure.
Correct.
And the fact there was such high behavior the first couple of months, that data does support that whatever was being done at RMMS had somewhat of an impact, although February, March, and yeah, in February, it's hard when you're talking about, I get why you're using the 2 months, but, yeah, so I mean, I think that you're just starting with the data, and that definitely there's groups that kind of cull through this data and can provide some guidance, but then, just so I understand, September, October, there was only 17% of the total incidents. So like you said, it was almost the opposite.
Correct.
By January, it was 37%. And then February to June, really what you have to do then is subtract, was another 34% or 63% of,
At CSDA.
63%.
63%.
Okay. I don't know, the math doesn't work for me.
Yeah,
The math isn't,
I-
I'm not a mathematician though, so I'm worried
Yeah, no, I really appreciate, so Tricia, to Tricia and Dan, I really appreciate the numbers and the metrics. I love a good number.
Me too.
There's a saying, it sometimes gets falsely attributed, or there's some controversy over whether Peter Drucker said it or not, but, what gets measured gets managed, and so, I love that, and so I love seeing numbers, I love seeing that we can measure things and manage things. Maybe this is how we look at numbers in this way, in education. I guess I'm not understanding, 41% of behaviors and 17% of behaviors, is that bullying behaviors? Is that just, the other kinds of, smaller incident behaviors? What kinds of behaviors are these? I know there's concern over, some behaviors with children are part of their, potentially with their IEPs or their 504s, and I understand we definitely have to protect confidentiality, but if we can do, obviously these numbers are anonymized and aggregate, if we can look at incidences of bullying versus the other incidents that we had, with those two reports, I would love to see those types of metrics. I think I had asked for some of those. Those to me would seem really, really valuable, so that we really see what's going on in terms of, what are we seeing, if it's, if it's language, if it's bullying, if it's, there are these different types that we have seen on these, these reports that we had gotten. Were they substantiated? Were they unsubstantiated? Unfortunately, when I went to the New Hampshire Department of Education, it's, when you look at the bullying statistics, it's not broken down by school, you know, it's not broken down by any of those. You know, are there minor behavior referral forms? Are there major behavior referral forms? You know, we can't manage what we don't know, right? So are we dealing with, you know, just abuse? Are we dealing with abusive language? Are we dealing with taunting? Are we dealing with, you know, lying or stealing? Or are we dealing with these bullying incidences? And that's what I'd really love to drill into, because all of the other work that we would like to do, or I would like to see us do over the summer, you know, I think that's going to be informed by some of these metrics and some of this data. You know, we think we need, you know, tier 1 SEL support or MTSS support, tier 2, tier 3, like what's the right percentage of those? Do we need widespread tier 1 support? Do we need to drill down more on tier 2, tier 3? Like, but I can't say that. I can, you know, I looked at, you know, not to go on, but I looked at the emails that we got from parents that come to our meetings or that email us. You know, we had 18 individual parents or community members email us. That was 18 people that took the time to say either my child or I know firsthand of bullying incidents, or, you know, my child having been bullied or having had racist comments said to me. That's 18 firsthand accounts, 9 of them. So that's half. You know, so it is something that we need to look at. This is data. This is, you know, so I love these statistics, and I really am enjoying having this conversation. But I think we need more of it, and I'm really hoping that we go and we dive in a way that's aggregate and anonymized, that protects everyone's confidentiality, right? The person who is on the receiving end and the person that feels the need to do the bullying.
I apologize for being late. I left work at 4:45, and between the weather and the traffic, and we could blame it on the Sumner Tunnel. It's not closing for a week, but maybe it's anticipatory traffic. So I apologize for being tardy, and if you distributed documents, I didn't get them. But one of the things that I was hoping to bring, and I don't think we've gotten to talking about policy yet, but in the New Hampshire School Board Association sample policies, there's actually an appendix form for the JICK that is like a reporting mechanism for administrators to report investigations to the board. And, you know, I totally understand what the staffing situation has been like at our elementary schools and what the pressures have been on the administration, and with, you know, leaves of absences in the guidance office, et cetera. But I would hope that with the additional support coming into the district next year, that, you know, we can tighten up some reporting mechanisms to keep the board better informed, and also to make reporting easier. Like, it shouldn't be difficult to, you know, with the reporting requirements and the documentation requirements for bullying incidences in the state, I feel like it shouldn't be, I mean, obviously it's cumbersome, you know, to try to pull in the data that we're wanting to have. Maybe it's not exactly the data that gets reported to the state or gets reported to the SAU. You know, so if there's something we can do to help you develop, or if there's a system that you know of, or if there's you know, some kind of a database or something that would be helpful for you as an administrator to, you know, keep better track of the data, pull out the metrics that will be helpful for the community and the board and the district, you know, in order to track these behaviors, please let us know.
I just want to say a couple other things. I mean, part of what we heard consistently from the 18 parents, and, some might have emailed individually or not, was that there was a feeling of not being comfortable reporting a lot of the time, and a lot of the incidents were reported later in the year that had been happening all year. So I'm still very concerned about that culture, and I think there's more that we're gonna be talking about, so I'll leave it at that. And then the other piece that I wanted to tie in is that some of that might have to do with eyes on in relationships, and I'm looking, and we still are missing, there's 11 or 12 paras for next year. That's not good. That's not good for kids that need one. It's not good for the kids that need the support. It's not good for preventing behaviors, implementing behavior plans. So I wanted to ask what the plan was to get those people hired. I know we're not the only district dealing with it, but what's moving forward? How are we going to go above and beyond the typical hiring process? And what's our plan? Because we can't keep on violating IEPs even, because it sounds like parents have been very generous with that and understanding, but, so I was wondering what we're doing to improve that over the summer. And that's not just a question for you, Trish, I guess that's more Lauren and Andy.
Go ahead, you go first.
Okay, so no, we are kind of casting our net a little wider with different platforms to recruit applicants. We are, reaching out to, people that we know from, different other facets of, past school districts, et cetera, as people are kind of making moves. We are working with agencies to see if there's anybody that we can bring on board. There are, a few different moving parts. We do have some that we are interviewing now, and we are hoping to have some hired in the more recent weeks. And then we're going to continue to keep on doing what we're doing throughout the summer. I don't know if you have additional, Andy?
The staffing piece is going to continue to be a problem for paras. It's just such a competitive market. And one of the things that we don't do in Brookline or Hollis is offer a benefits package.
Right, I was gonna ask.
So that is a big drawback. The co-op, because its school day is so much longer, it automatically qualifies for benefits. So therefore, when we sometimes sit down and a person interviews, they're selecting the co-op. So to Lauren's point, we've, kind of widened our parameters, going to try to do some more what I'll call direct recruiting, and I think we're going to need to get more flexible and maybe create smaller chunks of time, because I think there are people that might be able to give us 3 hours, but not the 6.
Yep, there are.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So we need to get flexible, but at the same time, that's a lot of management from, who's with the child, consistency for the child is huge, those type of things. But I know that human resources, special education, and the buildings are all working across the SAU to try to figure that out. We're, on the professional staffing level, doing well compared to a lot of our neighbors. And it's going to be very, very competitive again when we go into the fall, because we're just not seeing applicants come out of the college ranks because of everything that's going on in education, and they're less likely. I mean, we're losing, at times, math teachers to corporate America, and science teachers to corporate America, at double their income.
Well, I think what has to happen eventually, which is unfortunate, is that if we can't hire directly, there are agencies that have people. I know they're really expensive, but that's what we have to do. And then we will get a sense of what it's like to have to hire, I don't know, let's say 10 people from an agency at $60 an hour rather than 20, which we pay. And then maybe that would inform our next negotiations. But I think we can't skirt around it. I mean, we have to meet the needs of these students, and and meet the needs of all these students, because I'm going to guess that a lot of the para's responsibilities, they should be implementing behavior plans and doing all of that. And if we have 11 or 12 we don't have, that's, the stress that is going to cause to the rest of the building is gonna be a climate issue, and probably has been, so.
Correct.
I just
Correct.
wanna check in that we are doing everything possible. Yes, it's a rough hiring market, I get it. It's rough in New Hampshire because of the laws and a lot of things that prevent teachers now from wanting to work here when they don't have that in neighboring states, but still, I think even if we have to invest in people hired by agencies, or that we hire from agencies, that will give us some good numbers for the next, when are we negotiating the para contract again?
They're in, I want to say year 2 or 4-year contract.
Okay.
And
Well,
are benefits, I'm assuming, come through the contracts with them? Because we're talking about the fact that Hollis and the co-op offer benefits to paraeducators, but we
No.
don't.
Hollis
Oh,
doesn't,
just the co-op
co-op.
does, just the co-op does.
And it's just because their school day is over 7 hours of instructional time, so they hit the threshold, so we're legally obligated to offer those benefits. There aren't many districts in the state that offer benefits to paras.
Yep. If we have to go through an agency, though, I would be interested in, I'm just thinking long-term, I want to make sure that we track all of those numbers and then look at what it would have cost us if we had been able to attract candidates by offering benefits.
And
Because
I do have that information
You
now.
do, okay, I want to make sure that we're
Yeah.
tracking that for
Yeah.
future.
I mean, that's,
Yes, I can-
To make it
Yep.
a more enticing
Yes.
job.
well,
Is it possible to open up the contract mid-cycle or no?
You can always approach the union,
Okay.
absolutely.
well, it's also, as we go into budget season, it's a conversation that I think we have to look at in the community. And we have to say, this is public education, these are our children, we have to service them in the best way possible. And if we are not able to attract paraeducators at the rate that we are paying them, then we need to look at our budget. And we need to have a robust and healthy budget for our schools. And we are going into our budget season, so.
Yep, agreed.
Thank you.
You ready for the MTSS update? Okay. So all the information that we gathered, both data-wise, but also anecdotally this year, is driving a lot of the work that we've already begun with the MTSS process that we really began to dig into in the spring, February, March time, in both buildings in Brookline. And this is looking at behavior and academics, okay, and the supports and the structures that fall in that realm. So the SEL Tier 1 curriculum is necessary for all students at this time. We are looking at Tier 1 classroom-based, building-based components that students need a reset. We are looking at this work as a reset of building expectations, building culture, personal responsibility, okay, civic responsibility for students, for as they walk into a building, what does that mean for them to be in school? As an individual, as part of a classroom, as part of a grade level, as part of a school. So what we're doing with this work, you'll see kind of the action items. We actually began our committee work today. We're doing research and independent review of all of our processes, SEL curriculums. We have 16 staff who are working this summer, cross-section of classroom teachers, interventionists, special educators, and administration to tackle these tasks. So the SEL Tier 1 curriculum piece is our number one goal. We're looking to have recommendations to come forward by August 7th. As part of this, we're vetting them to look at trainings, both in-person, online trainings that may be necessary. We're looking at, of course, we're looking at cost, we're looking at time, the lesson structures, how it works with our schedule, what it provides. Many of these programs can provide us interventions, Tier 2. Not that that would be our only Tier 2 interventions and supports, but if it builds off the Tier 1, that is an option for us as we develop our own Tier 2 and Tier 3 options for SEL and for behavior. Are there extra resources? Can the rollout be throughout the year, et cetera, with all those training components? So that is our number one action item. Along with that, we are looking at our structures and supports overall in both buildings. As we start out the school year, how can we welcome students back with this reset of expectations and behaviors? So we're looking at visuals to have in both buildings, in classrooms, in hallways, in the lobby, using the wolf and the blue jays to really kind of, provide the students really clear information and expectations on what it means to be a student. So we're looking at our acronyms, we're looking at different things to welcome the students back in the building. Taking those first few weeks and working on modeling instruction of what does it mean to be in the playground, to be in the hallway, to be in the cafeteria, to walk down the hallways, and it's really kind of just having them take part with positive cultural components, for the school building. In addition to this, we are looking at our universal screening process and our Tier 2 intervention plans, looking at this from different scopes as we're navigating limited resources and limited staffing in certain intervention areas. How can classroom teachers work together for Tier 2 supports as well? This again is academic and social emotional. So what we're looking at is our universal screening process. Right now we use AIMSweb. Because of some of the different needs we're seeing in reading and math, we're looking at secondary layers of universal screenings to build off of the AIMSweb to target very specific areas that we're seeing, because as students are changing and developing, we're seeing different kind of academic learning needs and ways that students are learning. So targeting very specific skills and then developing the best intervention tools. The process for looking at student data, reflecting on student data, and making changes to student data is going to be a more team model on a more regular basis. So this data will be looked at by an appropriate team of administration, specialists, classroom teachers, school psychologists, guidance counselors, whoever is needed for certain discussions. And this will be done every 4 to 6 weeks per grade level. So this is an ongoing process. This is not going to be perfect day one. This is going to be a 1 to 2 year endeavor for many components. Some will be moved along faster than others. A lot of this is really taking the time and putting in the time and effort to instill in our students that pride and that community and that investment in their school and in learning. Just getting my list here. And then we're also, through this research and development, we're planning obviously the rollout for the opening days of school with the staff, and then what those weeks of school look like for the students, having consistency across classrooms and across grade levels and across the building. I'm happy to take any questions, and this is a lot of information. This is a big process, so I'm happy to provide any kind of more specific details or broader if you have any questions. Yes.
Have you, I heard reference to the universal screening process, and we were talking about academics and we were talking about social, emotional,
Yes.
behavioral. And I heard AIMSweb for academic. Have
Yes.
you decided on a screener for social, emotional, or is that part of your
That's
team?
part of the SCL, the program. So a lot of the programs that we are researching, and through CASEL also,
Yeah.
there's different screening tools. So that's going to, because again, we want consistency, we want common language, we want, those pieces to tie in together. So we're doing research on those. So the AIMSweb for academics has been in place. It used to be the NEWA and then the AIMSweb. So the academics, that's why some of these components are going to move along a little faster than others, but the social, emotional, behavioral, we want to find the right tool to really capture the data that we want for that need.
And then with the new team model that you're talking about, where teams will meet every 4 to 6 weeks.
Yep.
Who, will it just be the teachers? Will there be administrative oversight
Yes.
at those meetings? Okay.
Yep, so we are going to be having staff who are kind of the data keepers, the MTSS facilitators, if you will. So they'll take a look at, all the data. It will be behavioral reports, it'll be AIMSweb data, it'll be classroom information to really look at specific students, in these conversations. So you're going to have administration. We're looking to have our curriculum administrator and our student services administrator to be the administrative presence at these meetings. classroom teacher, the MTSS facilitator, and then any specialists that are needed for those discussions. So that'll vary by what the referral is to the Tier 2 process. We have a handbook that has already started to be developed for the MTSS process, and this will be developed more over the summer, and it will be a continuous work in progress as the year goes on, and we fill in a lot of these components, to have the comprehensive process in the end.
And then I just have one more. Oh,
Yes.
sorry.
Oh, no,
Before
you go.
go, I'll get mine over with.
Yes.
So I think that's great, thinking about the first 6 weeks of school. I mean, that's in the literature. The first 72 hours is so crucial, and the modeling, I love that, and the visuals. And I think a really crucial component of that is staff buy-in to that.
Yes.
That behavior is, being out in the hallways,
Yep.
relationships, and I've had nothing but positive experience with that. But we also, as a parent, we also have a lot of new teachers coming in. And so how are we setting that expectation that we could have all of this in place, but if a teacher, for example, somehow learns that or thinks that behavior is Mrs. Boulet's responsibility and not theirs, how are we preventing that what's our plan? Because otherwise it's useless,
Right.
or not as
Yeah.
well.
So that's actually where we started our conversations in February, is that how do we view behavior? What do we think of behavior? How do we understand behavior? Because it is a complex concept, it's not so simple, just like Tracy was saying, are these small behaviors, these big behaviors, how do we label what that is? A small behavior for some of us is a big behavior for others, right? So we had a lot of those conversations. So we've gotten a really great response, and you can, Trish, jump into, a really great response from our staff as far as the approach that we're taking with this process to really be proactive and to front load the instruction and the teaching and the modeling. So it's not just this behavior consequence piece, because we need to understand where the behavior is coming from. We need to make sure every student understands what the appropriate behaviors and expectations are in different scenarios and settings. So for the new teachers, that's something that we're going to start at new hire orientation. That's something that we will continue in those 3 opening days, because a lot of this work from the committee over the summer, we're going to be rolling out in presentations, in collaborative groups, in trainings that are all going to take place and begin on those 3 opening days. So we can work closely with the new staff and the mentors to head all of those pieces off, so they're kind of brought up to speed with what our vision and missions are.
Thank you, that's all
The-
wonderful.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I was on the mentoring committee this year as we were revamping the mentoring program. So I'll also be working this year for the new hires as far as part of that training on mentoring. And I think it's really important for us to start right then and there, but also because we'll have an additional administrator on board, I will also be able to then tie in more fully with those new teachers and, being part of that process from the beginning, and working side by side with the building facilitator as well.
Thank you.
course.
Sounds like a good plan.
Yep.
Excellent plan.
We're very excited about this work, and it's necessary, and the staff is really on board, which is great.
I was just going to ask, as the groups work on aligning, this, tier 1 program with expectations, behaviors, and consequences, want to be respectful of the work that Trish and Dan have done to sort of come up with those new grids that I think they showed us
Yeah.
at the May meeting. Will those be sort of tied into that and updated, I guess, and made sort of more in simpler language and?
Yes. Yes, so the grids are they're the, like the Blue Jay grid. I just want to make sure I'm thinking of the right grid before I answer the question.
Yeah, you're tying into the behavior matrix.
Oh, the behavior matrix, yes. Yes. So that's exactly, that's actually exactly what we're doing. We're crafting, and the staff has already begun, it's amazing. They're crafting those kind of expectations and behavior grids into what you're saying, into language that students, it's clear, it's short, sweet, so that they can see it and understand it. And that's what's going to be in classrooms. We're going to be having kind of consistency among classrooms, with base expectations and those kind of pieces. And then the teachers, of course, can build on their classroom community with their, with some additional norms that teachers always do and have. And we're going to have those as well for those areas that we're talking about, for the playgrounds, for recess, for cafeteria, hallways, specials, those components. So, yeah, so that work is all going to be.
And I was just gonna add, what we did specifically at each building, during a staff meeting. For instance, I had all my staff together, so everybody's had a voice and they understand that, the expectation is we all need to be on board. We all have to look at things with the same lens. So what we did is we put chart paper out and they rotated in different groups of different individuals at different grade levels or different backgrounds for where their teaching areas are. And they looked at, for instance, what's the expectation in the hallway, what's the expectation in the cafeteria? Everyone has different expectations or their thought process. That way everybody just jotted it down and then we could have discussions. So now it's been brought to the MTSSB committee and that's what we started looking at today. So again, everyone's has voices being heard, but we're also looking at it to make sure that we're all looking at it through the same lens.
Great, and then this is just a follow-up comment, I guess, is that, I think that, I've heard, some folks talking about like the need for like a code of conduct, to be like sort of either in the handbook or in the policies. And so, in my way of thinking, that it would be like helpful for this to be in place, and then the code of conduct would sort of be based on, these behavior expectation matrices, so that everyone sort of knows, like, this, if you behave this way, this is what you can expect as a consequence, or, I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's, always an option, and, the handbook outlines certain pieces of that, and if, there was kind of an appetite to formalize that in different ways, we can definitely look at that. I think, again, looking at this from a proactive approach, yes, I'm not saying we don't ever need consequences, but obviously we're gonna need consequences in those pieces. But I think we're kind of starting at a base level of being a student, being in a school, and what that looks like, and then with the tiered systems, looking at how to help approach and manage and teach behaviors if they're escalated or if things are, are seen and caught. But I think, once we develop this complete model, look into that, if we want to formalize that process, we definitely can.
And sorry, I have one more question, and I don't know if this is like an us question, or if this is a bus company question, and maybe, as we're trying to be creative with like para-educator positions, like, I don't know, has there ever been a conversation about bus monitors and having adults who are not, responsible for driving a very heavy piece of machinery, monitoring the behavior of, because if you look at, 31 at RMMS and 15 at CSDA, that's 46, and they're all on the same bus. It's not like these are different bus
Sure.
routes with different kids, like, so that's, 46 instances of disruption that led to children being removed from the bus for a period of time. And it's, with the exception of, some of the after-school detentions at CSDA, seems like a lot of these, behavior consequences are, stemming from bus situation. And so, like, if that's how the day is set, on the way to school, I just don't know, is that something that we as a district can address? Is that something that's
I just, having been a special ed administrator, I am one now, but in Hollis, and having rode the bus for 6 weeks because we couldn't find anybody, because nobody has the availability to ride a bus in the morning usually. And it's very hard to monitor kids on a bus. I was only in charge of one child, and even trying to hear what this child was saying was difficult. I don't know. I think that's like I get where that's coming from, but I think we need them in the classrooms, and we need, and I hate to say this as an educator, very specific and strict punishments for, like, sorry, you're gonna miss some time off of school, but if this is the third time your child has kicked somebody on the bus, and it sounds like we are doing that, and I think as we collect data, as we have more positive, proactive approaches, the bus is always an issue though. It always, because it's the most unstructured time in
Right.
someone's day. I think if you really wanted to monitor the whole bus, you'd have to have like 4 people. You're not allowed to move around.
Right.
You're not allowed to,
It's
you
big.
know, it's hard.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, maybe you have so,
It's also.
I think we would be wise to get through a year and see if this data goes down based on our proactive approaches and all these other things. And I agree, though, the proactive approaches have to involve the bus.
Right, messages about the bus and the
Yeah.
expectations for bus, are included in the teaching.
And I think maybe giving them some children, since it is unstructured time, my child is a 45-minute drive on a bus, just going into 3rd grade. Like, that, it's a very long time to sit on a bus with kids with nothing to do. So maybe maybe in the proactive approach, maybe there is, like, I've encouraged her to bring paper and write stories or draw pictures or, something. And
Yep.
some days she does, some days she doesn't, but we've had, we've experienced some of the struggles on the bus. And so I don't know if there's something creatively that we can offer, maybe a longer-term project for the kids to do that they only work on. I don't know, like drawing, writing books, stories, like, I don't know, something, but maybe if they don't get car sick, just, I don't know, something maybe, and educators are incredibly creative, and so maybe through some of that work, that's
I
something
was
we
just
can.
gonna say, I've recommended, and it's worked for several students, books on tape.
Yeah,
That they get from the library or what
Yeah.
have you.
yeah, but it is, I mean, it's, to all these points, the bus is an extension of the school day, but it is the least monitored and most unrestricted time. It's tough, so.
I just wanted to say one last, or maybe not one, I don't want to cut off the conversation, but I just would like to say thank you so much for all of this work. It sounds amazing. I'm really excited for it. I'm excited for our kids. I'm excited for the teachers. And, I think you said that I didn't write down the exact quote, but I think you said that the staff is on board, the administration is on board. And, it just got me thinking about when we did the culture, the culture survey, and there's a vulnerability, I think, that the teachers feel. And I know in our work, when we are feeling vulnerable, we always kind of look to have some guidelines and a roadmap to fall back on. And maybe with some of these, expectations of our students, having them written down, having them be very clear, having the teachers be able to point to them, and also then being able to express them to the parents that this is what we expect of all children, right? This is our culture. This is our community. We're not asking different things from anyone. This is what we expect of everyone. That maybe some of that vulnerability will hopefully dissipate, and teachers will feel more supported and less vulnerable, and we'll see less of that.
Great.
Is there anything else under that?
Yes, I just wanted, on the bottom half of that, we're also to take some time and have a fresh set of eyes, kind of look at 22, 23, kind of do a review. Because when you live something every single day, sometimes you don't notice something that's right in front of you. So we're going to have that completed. We're going to use some programmatic and curriculum time, as well as some training for administrative staff at our retreat this year, as well as for staff in the building, to really kind of make sure that we're all using the same vocabulary and talking about the same pieces. When we get to the budget process, we will look and talk about additional staffing, whether we decide to go in the way of paras. We had some great success this year at the co-op. They added their first social worker, and that really allowed us to do a number of things that enhance services for students. So when we go into that staffing piece, we do need to look at that from that lens. And then lastly, I think I've heard it a couple times, we are looking at a mechanism where we can present data to the board kind of in a non-identifiable way, every 3 months or whatever, just kind of what the trends are, because that same trend will help inform our staff, And now that Dan and Tricia have started to drill down in the data now, we kind of already maybe can forecast what months are going to be problematic. I think we could all kind of guess some of them, but at the same time, this will really help us. So I think we have a variety of different pieces going on. Some are budget related, some are long-term, some are short-term. And I think our hope is in August, September timeframe to kind of pull all this together and give you kind of the roadmap for the year, knowing that we might have to take a detour here, there, and some other places just to address what comes up. But I do want to thank Tricia and Dan, because I do think they are drilling down into the data, and I think we will be able to provide more data, kind of to Tracy's point on what type of incident, improper language versus bullying versus, inappropriate behavior. But I will tell you that without even looking at the data, the cafeteria, recess, and the bus are going to account for the most of it. And that's because it's freedom for kids, and they're learning how to adjust to freedom, and they do some wonderful things, and they make some poor choices at times, but that's why we're here. So we'll pull more pieces together and kind of come back again, because I think it'd be, the clearer we as administrators can make our roadmap, the easier it will be for everybody who's involved to follow along, whether it's the parent at home, the teacher, the para, or the administrator. So I thank you for all your comments. I've taken a bunch of notes, and we'll make sure that we incorporate those pieces.
Andy, can I ask one question about the thorough review into the incidents? What is the guiding question? I mean, we might not have it yet for that review, because in New Hampshire, there's barriers, unfortunate barriers to certain things, discussing issues and of racism and bias. Now, there's no full-on barrier, but are we, and so if we're an outside agency looking to conduct this review of the incidents and how to correct them, my thought would be the guiding question should be, what is in the best interest of students in order to prevent as many incidents as possible? We're never going to prevent all, but is a person taking into account the unfortunate legal climate that we're in and political climate with laws restricting certain conversations, or are we just going to look at it purely as what should be done and then we make a decision whether?
I think we're going to start off by looking at what I'll call practices and procedures. What do we do every day? What are we doing in the trenches? And having that person, whoever it may be, kind of give us what they see and what's the reality. And then, based off of that, we can draw some conclusions to at least start our journey down that roadmap. And there are some firms that do this across the state. What I did is I reached out to Drummond and Woodson, who's our attorney. They're going to make some recommendations on different people for me to consider that have expertise in this type of work. And I think their expertise will also be a driver for us, because we won't be the first district they're coming into. And, sometimes they'll have some things that they've done and worked very successfully, and then they'll have others that will need to be tweaked to better fit our population.
Okay. And the way I view that is if it's a legal practice or a legal firm doing the review, that's great. I mean, they're aware of the laws and all that, and eventually, if there are, and they will be guiding us around what's legal, what's not legal, how it should be handled, but the piece that eventually, and I'm not sure they would be able to offer guidance on, is, how do we provide education and training? I don't know who these people are, but there's collaboratives out there, like Accept Collaborative is an example, who goes into schools and does a thorough review, from beginning to end of your SST process, your MTSS, and all of that. But I don't think we're there yet, but I guess this would be a good first step to at least, that could be like a framework. And then if there are issues, what's in the best interest of students, a legal counsel may or may not really understand.
Correct.
the full-
And
Yeah.
I can guarantee you they'll have a background in this type of work.
Okay.
Okay,
All
they
right.
definitely will have done work around discrimination and racism.
Okay.
And will be able to kind of give us the next steps, or at least the next steps for the board to consider, because you may be on point using somebody more specific once we get to that point,
Okay.
okay? And with your permission, I'll turn it over to Donna to do the, go on to the money side, of revenue and expense report.
Okay, so your packet has the revenue expense report as of June 19th. As far as the expenses, there hasn't been a huge amount of change from the last report in May. This report does account for that last minute 40,000 transportation expense that came up just before our last meeting, and that Kelly had revised her memo mentioning it for the special ed trust. When we look at the revenue, first I just kinda wanna get a little off track, and I wanted to thank, I wanted to take a minute and give credit to the food service department for their hard work and efforts, as they had a great year in the food service sales. When I was speaking with Amy Cassidy, I asked, she's the director of school nutrition, she attributed this to a few things. She said, one, all the food service workers are very passionate about their jobs and the nutrition for the children. She said that they always try to offer choices, for example, vegetarian or gluten-free by request. She said they are very resourceful with their ordering and planning, and that they like to try to provide excellent customer service, so they keep coming back for treats. So, you'll see at the bottom of the report, a line that says unreserved food service and grant fund balance total of $132,084. This revenue, we need to remove it from the bottom line as it's specific to the grants and food service. And then after we do that, after reviewing the expenses and revenue and backing out the food service grants, we are left with an unreserved fund balance of $8,378. Once we fund the maintenance trust fund for $55,000 and set aside the $140,000 for the retained fund balance, we are left with a negative projected fund balance of $186,622. Using the FY '23 retained fund balance to fund the ADA projects at the cost of $108,162, it then leaves us with a negative fund balance of $78,460. And when we refer to Kelly's memo from the last meeting, she recommended using up to $100,000 of the special ed expendable trust to cover these unanticipated special ed expenses. And that's all I have, if there's any questions.
I'd just like to thank Donna for all her efforts. We're getting to the end of another year, and we're about to start our wonderful audit process that goes on for each of the entities, the SAU, the Co-op, Hollis, and Brookline. And both her and Kelly have done yeoman's work, especially when you consider the special ed expenses that came in unexpected, that occurred after we had already set the budget, as well as the ADA compliance numbers. So I really want to thank them for all their efforts. I think when the auditor's numbers come back in August, we'll be in good standing, as we have been for many years now. And with that, if it's okay with the chair, we can move to deliberations.
Sure. Does anybody have questions? No? Thank you. Okay. So deliberations to see what action the board will take to authorize the superintendent to hire, accept resignations, and terminate staff during the summer months. You want to talk about that, Ian?
Yes. Traditionally, we don't have a July meeting, so the board just authorizes me to take the steps needed to fill any positions that may come up as a result of maternity leave, somebody needing surgery, those type of unexpected things. And I typically will email the chair of that so that he can notify the board. And then in August, I give you the update from informational purposes of anybody who has made a change or moved into a position. And then my power no longer exists again, and it goes back to you folks in September.
Any discussion on that?
Yeah, so, don't know, I guess my feeling is that, the voters elected us to work for 12 months a year, as a board, and, I don't know, I guess my concern is that significant, hiring, firing, resignations, terminations could happen during the month of July that we would be abdicating our responsibility for. So I personally, I totally get the fact that, people go on vacation in July. And I don't know if they haven't had their meetings yet, but when I looked at the SAU calendar, it looked like Hollis School Board and the Co-op School Board both had July meetings on their calendar, and that there was no Brookline meeting on the calendar. So, especially given all the work that we have committed to doing this summer, I guess I'm not in favor of not having a July meeting, and
Then it's two different things, because the co-op has a July meeting, but still gives me the authority just because of trying to get people on board as soon as possible. I have no problem if you want to meet in July. I'm here for the co-op meeting. I'm sure we can find a date that works for everybody's schedule. Hollis is not meeting in July. So they're almost two different things.
Yeah.
I don't mind if the board thinks there's a need to meet in July. What we do at the co-op is we don't run it as much as a board meeting. We run it more as a budgetary workshop, because they are our largest budget, and we just try to get a jump start on that budget in July.
So I'll say two things. I am completely in favor of giving Superintendent Corey the ability to especially hire and not wait on us or a meeting in the month of July, 100%. The second piece of that, because earlier tonight, when Trish was going through the upcoming events, I leaned over to Colleen and I go, we don't have a July meeting? And I'm just thinking of all the work that we're doing. So I know this is two different things, but before we leave tonight, I would like us to make a decision on a July meeting, which I would strongly be in favor of, and not as a budgetary workshop, but given all the policy work that we're doing, particularly around that, I would like to, maybe we streamline our focus for that, if the board agrees, for July. And again, two different things, but
Can I ask a question? Has there ever been a time when you have hired an administrative position without the board's input under this authorization?
No. No, because typically your administrator's contract, they're obligated, especially by this point. And the only way I could see a board letting somebody out was if they were making a professional growth change. So let's say somebody was going to become from a principal to a district office position. I'd struggle if I wasn't aware of it long before that, because most administrators tell people when they're looking for that. So I don't anticipate that happening anywhere across the SAU.
I have to agree with Kelly and Allison on the work part. I think we have a lot of work that we could get done over the summer. I'm happy to meet over the summer. I'm also happy to look into forming other smaller committees. There's some policies that I had reviewed from our policies and procedures where we can form maybe smaller committees where maybe 2 of us or 3 of us could be on an advisory committee, where it's not a formal committee of the board, but more of an advisory committee. So I do feel as though we need to meet. I understand that we're having someone from the New Hampshire School Board Association come in August, which is wonderful, and I really appreciate that. There's work that I think we, each as individual board members, can do on our own to kind of understand our roles, but I really think that we can dig in more this summer.
more than happy to meet in July. I think we actually have a very positive momentum going, and it would be nice to just check in. And a lot of the work, actually, we aren't doing, staff are doing, so I really appreciate
Yeah.
that. So I also am cognizant of everybody's time with that. If we can find a date that works for the majority of us, I'm more than happy to do that. I 100% want to give Superintendent Corey the authority to hire, accept resignations, and terminate staff during the summer months. It's a sort of a pro forma thing. For every meeting that I've been at, I place trust in the interview committees, and it would be very rare for us to not approve a hire. And in this market, you don't have time to waste with, if you have a good teacher. So I think we can deal with that motion first, if people are ready. And then the other piece is accepting a resignation or not. I mean, again, it seems to be a formality. There's lots of teachers that if I could have, I would have not accepted their resignation, but
Yep.
I don't really have any authority with that, so. So if we're good with that, let's like at least break down that piece, and I'll make a motion to authorize the superintendent to hire, accept resignations, and terminate staff until the August board meeting, and require notification to the board of such actions. Does anybody want to second that?
I'll second.
Okay, so Allison will second. And then, everybody want to raise hands if you agree? Okay, so 3 in favor. Kelly, are you against?
I'm gonna abstain, cause I feel like, I'm not sure.
Okay, so 3, 4, and 1 abstain. And then, with the deliberations, how do we want to handle the July meeting? Do we have to do a motion to agree that the board will meet in July? or-
Well, I was just thinking, if it doesn't have to be the entire board, I'm not sure with the way that our board is fully staffed, like if it could just be the 5 of us who want to do some of this work, like if it doesn't need to be, if it doesn't need to be everyone, if we're not having like a full, like if it could just be a committee, like if we do want to just do work, or is that a non-public, or?
Yeah, I think that at this point, if there's no, I mean, I could be wrong, I think if there's no, decision in the meeting minutes to not have a July meeting, then a July meeting would just stay on the books as is, and then, if we need to, do like a doodle poll or Moodle or whatever they're called, to find out what, people aren't necessarily available the 4th Wednesday of July, that we just, make the public aware in enough time when the meeting will be. And then if we do have subcommittees, like the subcommittees could work maybe together, like ahead of that meeting.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's a larger question, and I don't think that it can be brought up in non-public because it's not about compensation or reputation, but, just how do we go about doing some of this work? Like, I think like Colleen said, we've got a lot of positive momentum, but, I can't be on policy because, like, that we already have you, Kelly, and Allison, so, I can't really, I mean, I guess I could come as a member of the public, right? But, I'm not quite sure how we get our work done. And like I said, I'm really glad that we have the New Hampshire School Board person coming in August, and I guess I could Google a bunch of stuff, but, we have from now until, till September to, I feel like, get some work done, and, maybe we have some extra time over the summer. So does it have to be like a full board meeting like this for us to sit around and talk about policies or what we want to do over the next year, or like a strategic planning session, or does it have to include everyone if it's, or could it be a non-public, like just some guidance around that, right? Like
Happy to. It would need to be a public meeting.
Got it.
Okay, and any committee cannot have 3 board members because that constitutes a quorum.
Right.
So the policy committee can't go to 3 because that would be a quorum, and you could potentially be seen as conducting business even if you didn't intend to. To your point, we can hold a July meeting and have more of what I would call a workshop format, where you are doing all your business in public, but it's more either addressing policies, and you could break it down into three facets. I think we have a functioning policy committee. I think there's interest in the work going on with SEL, and I think there's a budget component. So you could kind of look at those three components being your July meeting, so it's not your traditional normal agenda. It would need to have public input, because that's required. But we could take out most of the other, well, say, traditional items, and it would be up to the board at that meeting if they wanted to look at deliberating on any of those policies or kind of finalizing them for August. Also understanding that the board could, if they so choose, do a first reading, waive second and third, and adopt the policy if they wanted to have it in place before the school year started. So if there was a policy that the majority of the board was very comfortable with, you could move that forward easily just in August. And you're gonna move some forward tonight that, you could go from first reading to second reading, waive third, and adopt. So I think the piece for the board is the work has to be done in the public setting, which is, at times can feel like you're working against yourself because of that. But we do have a July, I think it's 18th, scheduled policy meeting. And from that, we'll bring some more policies. And what I would suggest for a meeting is, the consensus is that we want a meeting. So I will work with Colleen and Ken, and the three of us will coordinate some dates and get them out to folks to see what works well to get a quorum. Okay? Excellent.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think the next piece is to see what action the board will take to authorize the superintendent, I'm reading the same one. See what action the board will take regarding the administration's recommendation for the maintenance trust. So we already talked about that. So I can just make a motion if everybody's ready for that. Okay, so I make a motion to approve expenditures from the Brookline Maintenance Expendable Trust in the total amount of $213,850 as outlined in the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Okay. And all in favor? That was 4-0. And then to see what action the board will take to authorize the superintendent to sign the agreement with DECO and the board. Is there anything Andy, that you wanted to talk about with that?
No, we had talked a little bit about that. It's been vetted by legal. They're quite comfortable with the wording and everything. And this will give us a gathering point that can accommodate all the students for the short term. And realize that it's only for the short term while we're waiting for the buses to come from the bus barn to come pick them up. And I want to again publicly thank DECO for their willingness to let us use their facilities in case we had some sort of emergency that forced us to evacuate the building.
Yes, thank you to DECO for doing that. That's
Yeah.
appreciated. So if we're all set, any questions?
Was there any further conversation about, like, the presence of DECO employees, or?
Actually, just so you know, I did reach out to them. I did not get any numbers back from them at this time, so I'll do.
I just remember, I thought Member Mannion, like, was wondering if, like, the board should, like, be able to look at the facility, or?
No, I just wanted to make sure that there was a clear distinction that in the case of emergency, DECO employees are here, and all of our students and are supervised by staff and are here, and I would imagine that Brookline Police would be on scene as well, but I just wanted to make sure that because we don't know those adults,
Like,
regardless of
obviously
how
they
empty,
haven't
I just wanted to make sure
undergone
that, I just wanted to make sure that there was something in, a very clear understanding with the DECO employees that in the event of that emergency, that they should not have contact with our students. And I just wanted, that was my concern back then, was just making sure that somewhere in our agreement, that is stipulated, because I'm just looking out for our kids in that sense.
But I saw the draft.
It's just easy
The
in
draft
emergency
agreement, does it have
situations.
that kind of language in there?
I think, are we talking?
No.
I just want to make sure, we're not taking CSDA kids to a practice evacuation drill with DECO. DECO has agreed for us to use their premises in the case of a
emergency.
severe
I
emergency.
think we would
but
practice.
We did use it for the practice
Okay.
outdoors, just
Okay.
Just
outdoors. when
Outdoors,
we
we
had-
didn't go in.
Right,
Okay.
and that's why we specifically did it on a Friday, arranged with them, because remember I told you that they're basically a training facility.
Oh, that's right.
Monday through
Okay.
Thursday, so
Yeah.
we schedule it with them on a Friday.
Okay.
And I think I think what the document is that we're authorizing the superintendent to sign is just that partnership. It doesn't necessarily break down the details, but my kind of just looking ahead concern was when there is an emergency, it's much easier to pull out the playbook and follow the step-by-step of this is what is going to happen in the event of emergency, and just making sure somewhere in that playbook we have that DECO employees know that this is what they do, and that CSDA staff and faculty also understand what is supposed to happen to make sure that there's a separation. That's all that I was
So
asking
the
about.
only, if I'm looking, it's like the now therefore for mutual covenants and matters set forth herein as of the date, blah, blah, blah. It allows us to gather on the property, and DECO warrants and represents that the property is in suitable condition. And that it has used reasonable care in maintaining the property, that there's, so, and it does say that CSDA may not, so shall gather, describe area, so I wonder, it says CSDA may not access any other area of property without the express permission or direction of a duly authorized representative of DECO. I wonder in that paragraph if there,
Is another line that says, and DECO employees will not
have access
have access
the
to that
area.
space in the event of emergency or something.
No.
Yeah, I get what you're
Other than
saying.
whoever that duly authorized representative is, like,
Well, then, because we are in the summer, we're gonna have a July meeting,
yep,
so I'll take it back to the attorney and ask him to add something in that paragraph.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
just some
I would-
language, just,
I would
I'd feel more
not be able
comfortable.
to sleep with myself. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I thought that
Mhm.
we were putting a child or
Right.
anyone at increased harm
Yep.
by having them exposed to adults who had not been through our formal vetting process.
So do we want to forego this motion then until
I think
July
we
to
table it.
authorize their?
Please.
Okay, so we'll forego that till July. Okay. All right, and then the next thing we're deliberating on is to see what action the board will take on policy IHBAA, special education, determination of a specific learning disability, second reading and adopt. Any discussion on that?
You know, I don't believe that the policy, committee, did anything, took any action on that.
My understanding was that there were no changes made, and that's why they were comfortable with moving it to adoption instead of doing a second and third reading.
And we had talked about it previously too.
Correct.
Okay. So if everybody's comfortable, then I'll make a motion to accept the second reading of policy IHBAA, special education determination of a specific learning disability, and waive the third reading. And that's it, I said it a little bit backwards, so we're going to, let me try it again. I'll make a motion to accept the second reading, waive the third, and adopt policy IHBAA, special education determination of a specific learning disability.
A second.
All in favor? Okay. I'm checking online here. All right, so the next piece is to see what action the board will take regarding policy IJOC volunteers. And I'm trying to remember is there any discussion on that? It was amended.
apologize, I cannot find my notes from that.
I know we talked about, Ken had brought up how burdensome the volunteer training is. And I remember thinking, it can't be that bad, you just watch it. And I actually went through it, it took me a long time. And it's super repetitive and it's super slow. And, you know, some of it is incredibly important, suicide prevention for volunteers who might not otherwise be trained. And some of it was, I don't know. I don't know how we could make it better, but I'm sure it's a huge barrier to getting volunteers in our schools.
I mean, that's my concern. My concern is also some of it is might be triggering for people.
I think that one of the things that we had talked about was that doing certain aspects of the training, like on odd years and even years, in order to I apologize, I did not bring the correct.
And I don't know if, I'm looking for guidance on this, if we're veering off track, if that's affected by the policy at all.
I think this, and also I think this is a second reading, so,
Yeah, because I think, it's policy GBCD that requires the background investigation and criminal record.
yeah.
I mean, that was less.
I think,
Yeah.
here, I think that we were looking at, changing some of the language in terms of designated volunteers and, supervised volunteers, and that we combined, sorry, thanks for pointing me to that document, Trish.
Yeah.
I don't work so well on hour 15. So we, item F was, we sort of combined F and G into one, paragraph where the orientation at the building and district level, including general job responsibilities, information about routines and procedures, including safety and evaluation. We struck work because this is volunteer, and place of assignment, specific task for the assignment, so that, you know, a designated volunteer might be, you know, different than a supervised volunteer. So a supervised volunteer would be someone maybe who volunteers for field day, so they might come in for a one and done. And so in those instances, you know, perhaps they would not have to go through the whole, training process, but they would receive orientation and instruction the day of field day. I mean, they still would have to, you know, go through the required, I think you still have to go through mandated reporting, and, there's some legal requirements that we can't waive.
Can I ask a question? And I apologize. Are we at a shortage for volunteers?
No.
Okay. Because I get what you're saying about the training might be triggering. I get what we're saying about it being long, but it's necessary. It's necessary. It's necessary.
Some of it is necessary.
No,
Yeah.
it is. And here's why. Because if we're going to have volunteers with our children and our students, if somebody's not willing to put in the time to understand things to watch out for within our kids and children that are not theirs, then they don't need to be there.
I think, I'm not saying that there doesn't need to be some level of
Yeah,
training.
no, I mean-
There doesn't necessarily need to be 6, I don't know the answer to that question. I'd be curious if, I don't think being willing to put in 6 hours makes you a good person, able to work with
No,
kids.
I'm not
I
saying.
think there's some things in there that if we could get sued if a volunteer did and we didn't inform them they should not be doing
But-
that, but some of it is.
But also as a community volunteer, I've done that training. I
Right.
did it for baseball. I've done things for Girl Scouts. Like, I've done multiple things
Yeah.
in order to be able to work with children and volunteer and do all these things. And I'm more than happy to do it, but I also know that there are many, many parents that can't do that. And in my son's class, there aren't that many parents that are been able to volunteer.
I just,
So to hear that we have a lot of volunteers, that's
Surprising.
great and surprising.
So Tracy, I think they can be supervised volunteers, and so by being supervised volunteers, they're never left alone in the building, they don't have regular direct contact with children, they can't perform duties of designated volunteers, and so then they are not held to the same provisions of policy, GBCD, which is the background investigation, so that's like dictated, I think that's primarily coming from the state, right, that's in GBCD.
So when we're asked to volunteer for field trips and we just check it off, does that then, do those parents get checked by,
Yes.
that's
there's a
wonderful.
list.
Yeah,
So
and
because-
the schools,
so,
Because you're a chaperone for a field trip, you might need to like take a child to the restroom. You might
Yeah.
need to be alone with a child that's not your child.
yeah, no, and I wasn't saying that just because they don't wanna sit through 6 hours doesn't make them a good person, I just wanna be clear about that. I just don't like the argument that we're cutting back training because it's too long when we don't have a shortage
No,
of volunteers, like,
I
that,
wasn't saying that either, so
that
I
was
wanna make
what
sure.
I, that,
I'm cutting back
okay.
I think we could look at whether or not there is a more reasonable amount of hours that a person needs to put in so that we
Okay.
can have adequate volunteers. The last time I heard about volunteers, I heard that we were short for cafeteria and a lot of other places, and not that parents can replace staff, but when we have a building, as you know, where there's behavioral issues and all of that, more eyes are better.
Yes.
So,
and I think the other question that also came up was that if someone, for instance, they're coming to CSDA, they just joined up to be volunteer, they go through this training in 4th grade. Well, they plan to volunteer from grades 4, 5, and 6.
Yep.
Should they have to go through the exact same training if they've already
Right.
received
Yes.
it once in the same school? I think that was the question, you know,
Right.
could they
That's fair.
forego maybe the second year, that it's only half of that
Right.
training because they've already received it once, and then go back the following year.
Yep.
and that's what
But I think
staff
that-
do with trainings, if you have like a comm training, you do an initial training, it's a 2-day training, but the next training you might do a day, the idea is that you get it and you use it, I mean, this is all sort of legal questions, I guess we're not at the point of, I mean, we weren't going to accept it fully anyway.
I would suggest moving forward with the second reading, and then I'll
Yeah.
do policy in my office, get some of the questions answered, because I think I see both sides of the issue.
So we'll just hold on this,
No, you can do
We
the,
can-
you
we
can
can
do the
approve
second
a
reading.
Do second reading.
okay. So I will make.
So the changes, just to highlight again, the major changes in this second version that we're voting on tonight to approve and send back to the policy committee is sort of the collapsing of F and G into one paragraph. And that, yeah, I think that's the major change.
And the G is,
The G's been
Crossing out.
struck out because we took the language that we felt like was important. There really isn't a volunteer coordinator. It's really the school administrator or the
I
office
see what you're
secretary,
saying,
the office administrators who are doing that a lot of the times, making sure that, people who are designated volunteers have had the appropriate training, have the documentation. So we struck paragraph G and took the language from paragraph G that we thought was relevant and put it in F.
okay. So I'll make a motion to amend, is it policy IJOC, volunteers in its entirety by replacing it with the copy provided with the agenda and accept the second reading as amended. If I need to fix that, somebody let me know.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Okay. All right, and then the last piece on deliberations is to see what action the board will take on policy JICA, student dress code, first reading. Kelly, if you want to talk about
Yeah,
that.
so we have not had a dress code in the Brookline School District. And so what we did at this policy meeting, was we used, the state template from the New Hampshire School Board Association for, policy JICA. And we decided to sort of start from there. The paragraphs, the 3 paragraphs, that start the dress code are taken verbatim, I believe, from, that, draft policy. And, what we did do was we modified and simplified the district standards, given that we wanted to, create a policy that was not specific to any gender presentation. And that it would be a shirt or a dress that has fabric in the front, back, sides, and has either straps or sleeves. That the student also wears pants, skirt, leggings, shorts, or etc. And shoes. And that clothing may not depict hate speech, offensive, vulgar, or racist language or pictures, and clothing that glorifies, encourages, or promotes the use of alcohol or drugs. That's kind of as far as we got. So the language that's after that, building principals shall ensure, that is again, I think from the templated language, we didn't really make it beyond the district standards A and B. I will say that, Principal Molinari did, raise the question of, having a policy that aligned more closely with the Hollis School District, which I think is maybe a paragraph. I don't have it with me. You know, and not using the templated policy. We also did hear from some teachers in the district who had concerns about adopting a dress code policy, which in their view would loosen changes to the dress code policy, which we're not loosening changes to the dress code policy because we don't have a dress code policy. But it's clear that the professional staff in the Brookline district, or at least at CSDA, would like to provide input. And they provided several examples, one from the Bedford McKelvey School, one from the Milford School, one from Nashua, one from Amherst. So I think that, you know, as a policy committee, we will certainly, you know, have to consider, you know, we'll consider this at the next meeting. So I guess just to say that this first draft is a draft. And, you know, I think we still have some work to do. And I think that it's very likely that we could accept this as the first reading, and that the second reading could come back with the Hollis District's policy, which would be much shorter than this. So,
It makes sense. Does the co-op have a dress code policy?
yeah, I think the co-op's dress policy is a shirt and like a top and a bottom.
I
And
just,
shoes.
okay, I just think if we're looking to help teach our children to be part of communities, right? Looking at where they're going to and making sure we're setting them up. But if that one is thinner, then well, let's,
I
yeah.
would say that I think that if we were to do that in the Brookline School District, we would get significant pushback from the professional staff.
If we were
And-
to do.
If we were to do,
Look at the co-ops.
Oh.
But I haven't looked at them,
The
so.
co-op sounds like it's like this, right? They have to wear pants.
I don't think they have a
shirt,
policy.
Don't even think
I think they have the guidelines.
Just the
In the
guidelines.
handbook, I don't believe there's a
Yeah.
policy
Okay.
for
Well, no,
dress
that's,
code.
that's why, because as soon as you said Principal Monari suggested looking at Hollis's, makes sense, especially since the two are convening into one place, so where's that one place they're going? But if that one doesn't do what we're looking for at the moment,
Hollis
then.
one might.
Right.
I just don't
Well,
have
then
the
that makes
language
sense.
in front of me right now.
But that's the only reason I brought up the co-op was,
Yeah.
yeah, so no, that, because what he says makes a lot of sense. So then I just was trying to take it a step further, but that doesn't work if if their dress code is not really
Yeah,
existent,
and
then
they're young adults
it's
and
slightly different. Yep. Understood, just
Yeah.
putting it out there.
I think dress codes are a struggle no matter what, and I struggle with this one a little bit because it could be, there's a lot of judgment that has to take place. You think you'd use less language and there'd be less judgment, but now, because we're not being specific about length, which I'm not necessarily in favor of, I struggle with dress code in general, but these are K to 6 students. So if we're not being specific for an administrator, then the administrator, if they are, is gonna have to rely on, it constituting a health problem. I guess there's unsuitable for school wear. So, I mean, that's something that could be, there's gonna be a lot of discretion. And then the only other piece that, and I like the language in general, by the way, I see where this did come from, something, the law or the guidance from,
I mean, we
ADL.
basically took the, let me see if I have.
I just think it's a lot of words to not give a lot of guidance to.
Yes.
Well,
And there's
but-
nothing about violence or guns, I mean.
I think it does say that.
It does, okay, am I missing the violence? I mean, that could be, again, go to.
I think offensive, vulgar, racist.
Well, so I was gonna ask you about that though, is like, there's not, that becomes a little, perception oriented, right? Like,
Yeah.
because what's offensive to me might not be offensive to another. So I think that if that's gonna be in there, I think we need to define that better.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say that it's similar for like harassment or, bullying and harassment are in the eye of the beholder. Like, if I feel that I'm being sexually harassed, then I'm being sexually harassed, whether or not your intent was to harass me. But yeah, I think that's good feedback. I think that the problem with what we have now is that it is all left up to the administrator, and then the administrator is, put under pressure, perhaps, from the professional staff according to cultural norms or the way we've always done things. And that's not always reflective of,
This isn't gonna help with that, though. I'm just saying, I don't mean it
It's
to
not.
be, there's nothing in this that will help an administrator. and
I mean, it
have
says a shirt, like, it doesn't
It says you have to
say-
wear a shirt, pants, and shoes. And so
Yep.
when you have somebody that's wearing, I mean, and I just wanna bring this up because it happens, what you might have is somebody wearing intentionally or unintentionally shorts that don't cover their entire butt. Let's just throw that out there. And so that's the uncomfortable conversation you have to have. Someone could argue with this that's, I guess that would be it's unsuitable, so at least that's there, that's where you'd have to go, but dress codes are so hard, so I don't have a lot of answers to this, but I definitely, I don't think we're helping
Yeah, no, I
administrators.
think it's tricky. I think
Yeah.
one of the most important things that I took out was the word modest. I don't feel like the word
I don't
modest
like that
has
word.
any place in a dress code in 2023. It's Victorian and is a word that's only used to describe a style of dress worn by female presenting students.
No, I agree with that.
So.
I would love to see in number 2, clothing that glorifies, encourages, or promotes the use of alcohol, drugs, or violence.
Yeah, I was trying to find, and it might have been in some of the ADL stuff, or it might have been in some other draft dress code policies I was looking at, it said something like symbols that are typically understood to represent, something like that, and I couldn't find it. So yeah, I think that it's a touchy subject. I know that we do have a student who is hoping to present to the policy committee, if not to the full board, some research that they did about dress codes. It's just they could not. We've been trying to figure out the appropriate way to do that, and she was not able to get it together for tonight. So hopefully she'll be able to come to the July 18th policy meeting. So I guess given that this is the first reading, if I can make a motion to accept the first reading. So I would say, given it's a first reading, I'd like to make a motion to accept the first reading of the policy JICA student dress code. Given the discussion and the deliberations that we're having and the feedback we're receiving from the community and the professional staff, and that the policy committee will take that all in.
I'll second. So,
All in favor?
all in favor?
Sorry,
Thank
Colleen.
you.
3-0.
Mhm. We do not have a need for non-public tonight,
Lovely.
so if somebody wanted to make the motion, I don't think Colleen would be offended if we motioned to adjourn when she was out of the room.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Have a second?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
you.
Adjourned at 8:06.